excited. I'm excited. Ian, oh my God. All right. So this show is perfect for you. We started 3 years ago. We have about 15 million downloads.
It's amazing. I've been checking you out. It's like fantastic what you're doing. Fantastic.
I love you so much that you don't even get it, but you'll start to get it. So this show is all about people who want to do big, impactful things. It's not about day jobs. It's about impact. It's about purpose. Who is doing that more than you? Name 6 people. Don't know. So, and you're doing it in the coolest, most effective way, truly. So we're going to get into your story, and I have all these fun questions. I obviously go rogue a lot, but is there anything specific that you want to make sure that you're promoting right now or anything like that?
You know, I just think Spiritual Gangster would be the first thing I would want to make sure we like cover and touch. And other than that, we're good. And we'll just kind of take it where it goes.
Let's do it. We're going to do it right now.
Great, so.
I'm going to do your intro later, and we're going to go right now. Here we go. Ian, I'm so happy. I feel like it's a little bit like Christmas today, even though I'm a Jewish girl, but it feels like it because you're here. And I love you, and I love what you do. Tell us a little bit about the journey before Spiritual Gangster. Tell us where you were. Where does this even begin for you? Where's the seed of this start?
So I'm going to go back to sort of my childhood. So I was a Jewish kid growing up in Detroit, and my father was a lawyer. My mom was into a lot of like alternative medicine. We would have yoga teachers from like Satchidananda's ashram come in and teaching yoga in our back room. And, I was doing like shoulder stands as a kid. I found these pictures, but I used to think my mom was, she was way out there. It wasn't sort of normal then. And, then I ended up going to school in Nashville, and I ended up going to law school in LA. My dad was like, you can do whatever you want, but if you go to law school and become a lawyer, at least I know you won't be pumping gas for a living. So cut to my time in law school in California, and this was like, mid 90s, and I started going to yoga. I really got addicted to yoga, and I was watching yoga boom during my first and second year of law school. There'd be like 5 or 6 people in the class, and my mom was like, you should go check it out. It would, I was stressed out. I just kind of gotten over a relationship with my college girlfriend, and just, getting into law school was like it was a very sort of win-lose competitive environment that just, produced a lot of stress. So I went to yoga in Malibu the first time, and it felt amazing. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then I went to go see my mom, who at that time was living in Florida. And I told her, hey, I went to yoga. This is great. And she gave me a yoga book. And I was flying back from, I think Fort Lauderdale or Miami to LA, and I had my yoga book, and I sat in the airplane, and there was this Indian guy in his satin jacket and his wife, and I picked up my yoga book, and he looks at me and he goes, you do yoga? I am Bikram. And I was like, oh, you want to see my yoga book? And he looked at me, he goes, I have my own book, 2 million copies. So we landed.
Oh my God.
And I went, and I had no idea who the guy was at the time.
So not normal. Not normal.
He gave me his card, and I was like, okay, if I don't get this. So I went to Borders, which existed. I was living, in Westwood by UCLA at the time, and I stopped at the Borders bookstore literally when I landed in the taxi and bought Bikram's yoga book. And then the next morning I went to his class, and I started going to yoga sometimes twice a day before and after, and really was getting, I want to say, almost addicted to yoga. And then I ended up my last year of law school writing a business plan on yoga studios. And I did a teacher training in LA at Yoga Works while I was in law school. And I sent out the business plan to a couple of my friends. They're like, oh, this is great. Where are you going to do it? And, in LA, yoga was kind of booming. At this point, when classes that used to have 8 people in it now had like 80. And I came to Arizona on like a family vacation. We used to come out here, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go check out the yoga studio. And I couldn't find it. And then I found what was supposedly the best of yoga in Phoenix. And it was like the dirtiest, dingiest basement of like the Motel 6. I was like, no way is anyone to go here. So I ended up creating, my mom also was very connected and very spiritual. And she had a friend of hers was probably in her 60s at the time, and her son was a doctor in San Diego. So she came and met me at my law office where I was doing like my summer internship of the job that I was going to take. And she said, your mom's told me all about you. I used to have a yoga studio in Phoenix. I think we should do this together. We should be partners, and we should open a yoga studio in Phoenix. I was like, okay, that's great. Because at that point I wasn't even teaching yoga. I didn't even think that I was going to actually move to Phoenix, but I knew there was no yoga studios in Phoenix. So one sort of thing led to another. My business plan I sent out to a bunch of friends, and like 6 of them sent me money. And then I got about like a $30,000 bonus for the law job that I was going to take in LA. So before I took the bar in California, I moved to Arizona, spent my like law bonus and the money I raised, and opened the first yoga studio in Phoenix. And then I basically
Oh my God.
I had to come back and start my job, I think November 1st. Everyone else started like in the summer, but I basically took the last day possible to fly back to LA and, start being a lawyer. And then at times I would be a lawyer during the week, and on weekends I would fly out to Phoenix and teach yoga, where I just sort of started. And cut to about 3 months later, I was on a vacation with one of my best friends growing up, and his dad was very successful and always like a father to me. And he's like, Ian, your business will never work unless you like go quit your law job and go move to Phoenix. So this is a really funny story of like even me quitting my law job. It was over Christmas I flew back, and I went in the office and I was like looking for all the partners to quit to. And I was like really nervous. and like day one, none of the partners were there. Cut to like day 4, like, cause everyone was on vacation. So I was like in there waiting to quit. And day 4, I finally went into the partner's office. I'm like, hey, I have this other business. I need to quit. And they had just given me another bonus for over Christmas holidays that I was like, can I give you the Christmas bonus back? He said, no, you can keep it, but if it doesn't work out, you can come back here and be a lawyer. So I ended up, that was my last time actually being a lawyer, really working for anyone else. And I moved to Arizona. And then like the first couple of years, I was like, what am I doing? I'm like driving down the street in Phoenix. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm the yoga teacher of Phoenix. And so we had that business for 13 years. And over that time, I taught yoga all over the world, and we had a huge teacher training business. And, being Jewish, when the business turned 13 years old, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to do something else. So I was really looking for a way to exit the business. And I was able to get in contact with Lifetime Fitness and their CEO, and was able to sell the yoga business to Lifetime Fitness, which I still, own a piece of their business, and help them build their yoga business by bringing in a couple other friends of mine who now run their yoga business. But what happened was, when we were teaching yoga, I used to teach yoga to hip hop rap music. So I would play, and I had a lot of job security, so no one could fire me, but I would do
How
like
can I
Tupac.
like you more? Every time I'm like, I'm good. I'm all the way. You like add that. I'm like, that's the coolest thing ever. Who does that? You did.
So
Go ahead.
we kind of sort of invented yoga to rap music. And what would happen is you get all these people in the room, and they'd be like a school of fish. So we'd all start moving together. And, at times I was able to teach, I was the yoga teacher at Bonnaroo Music Festival with thousands of people. I would talk, like, I had Michael Franti play with me at Rothbury, and we had like 3,000 people doing yoga to live music in the morning of these festivals. And a friend came up to me after class one time, and she said, you're like a gangster, a spiritual gangster. So we ended up making
Famous
t-shirts.
last words. Oh boy.
I was like, this is a great one. So we started making t-shirts in our yoga studio that said Spiritual Gangster. My wife, Vanessa, was running our store, and she's also been on the cover of Yoga Journal at that time, like 4 or 5 times. And we basically started Spiritual Gangster as the house brand for our yoga studio. And it also was something that when we were ready to sell at One Yoga, it gave us something else to focus on and transition into. But the sort of long backstory is it came from, my love of yoga and our yoga studios here in Arizona.
I'm obsessed with this story. It's so good. And let me tell you something about you. You are so endearing and genuine. And I live in LA, and I do the yoga works, and I did the MARC Center at UCLA for a couple of years. You would think that everyone who does yoga and mindfulness has the sweetness that you have. It's not always like that. There's a lot of people who are a little pretentious about it. You are like this is what I love. And no wonder it became Spiritual Gangster. No wonder you started like allowing hip hop music. Like there's something about you that is just goodness. I'm telling you that. And you know what I mean. That's just it. Like you are just a very genuine person. And it's really nice to meet you and know that. Cause I don't know. I mean, from afar, you seem super fancy, and you could have been affected and have an ego. That's what's crazy about it. Sometimes the more people do the yoga, the ego actually gets bigger. It's just they have like an excuse for it. It's awesome.
Well,
And
thank you.
it's
I mean,
true.
I felt like, you know, even we got into yoga, I felt like, oh, I was going from a lawyer to get into yoga, and I thought all these people were like holier than thou. And also yoga was like very granola and crunchy when we got involved, and it wasn't cool. So we wanted to make something that was accessible to people.
Yeah.
And that's really what our yoga started as. It was almost like a third place. Had a spiritual component, it had a fitness component, and it had a community component, which was super important. And, you
Yeah.
know, I did find out early days that even like I found some lawyers much more pleasant than some of the yoga teachers we would bring in to teach. It was really
That's
wild.
so interesting. Well, you had a really nice lawyer story there where the guy, you like, can I give you the bonus back? And he's like, no.
Yeah, that was really amazing. Actually, I think after I ended up quitting that job, they changed the entire contract that if you didn't stay for a year, you had to prorate all your bonus
Makes
back.
sense.
But I did offer it back. I was like, I think you
You're
guys should
good.
have that.
You know why? Because you're a Midwestern human being and people from Detroit are kind. This is the thing. This is how it is. I'm a big Hank Greenberg fan. My husband's parents are from Detroit. A lot of Detroit love going on over here. For his 40th birthday, I got him his first Shinola watch.
Oh, nice.
That's right. Yeah, Detroit.
I love it. I'll show you my Shinola clock sitting across the room.
There it is. There it is.
So
listen, you're awesome.
Big Shinola fan.
Okay, wait. Turn your thing. Yeah, there you go. You got it. It's the salt of the earth. It's the good stuff. So let's talk about what then happened, because it started with this in-house, like, let's make a couple of t-shirts. Your wife is on the cover of some journals. I can see how people maybe see her wearing it, but now it's literally everywhere. Now, I'm not joking. Swear to you. I go to Bloomingdale's and I head right to that one section. I'm like, just what's all your new Spiritual Gangster stuff? That's what I do every time. So this is so big. It's the biggest thing. And it's in all the cool places, like all the boutiques on Montana, the places where anyone goes who knows anything about anything. You're there, but it's not a t-shirt. It's a t-shirt. My kids have the clothes. So what happens? Tell us the next the progression.
So after we ended up selling the yoga business for 2 or 3 years, it was more of an expensive hobby. We were making it out of our garage. We were printing on blanks. You know, my kids were tagging with my wife at the table. We were shipping out of our garage or even apartment we had here. And after about 2 or 3 years, we're thinking, okay, what should we do? And we actually tried to kill the business for a few times.
No way.
We were like, oh, we don't want to do this. I don't know. This is because it was really an expensive hobby, costing us a few $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
And we had Equinox was one of our first customers, and during the holidays they put us in all doors in New York City and gave us a huge order. And because we were so connected in the yoga world, like Yoga Works, Core Power Yoga kept ordering, and they kept ordering more. So we're like, okay, now it's time to make this a business. And
what did you have at that point? T-shirts and sweatshirts or everything?
Just T-shirts and sweatshirts, and we were literally printing on blanks. So we weren't doing any cutting. So we were buying the blanks, we were printing them, I don't even know if we were ripping the labels out at that time or not. We're just retagging it, but it was a very simple business.
Yep.
And so I would say cut to, I tell people it's a 10-year overnight sensation, but it's really only been a business for like 5 or 6 years. So we decided to get intentional and turn it into a business. And I used to go, I do a lot of like off-country skiing. And one of my friends who I did a lot of skiing with.
Of course you do. What do you not do? And then I do that, of course. Right.
So we would do like a lot of heli skiing and cat skiing together. And we had some mutual friends, and a friend of mine, his family business was O'Neill Surf. So I said, hey, we really, we don't know much about apparel. I need some help in figuring out how to grow the business. He said, how big are you? I said, we're about $500,000. He's like, I can't help you. You need to come back when you're 5 million. If you get to 5 million, we'll see what we can do. So cut to the next year, we went skiing together. I said, hey, Daniel, I need your help. He goes, how big are you? I said, we're 5 million. So we went from like, $600,000 to 5 million, just really
in 1 year.
Pretty much in 1 year. And that was the first year of really consciously focusing on doing business. And at that point, it was almost all online. So now then we shifted over to that platform, and that was about 4 years ago. And now we've been really scaling up the. So it's been, quite a journey, but that was like one of our first steps. And then we had a friend of ours who, we met through a bunch of coincidence and serendipity, and she helped us for a little while. She was able to get us in all windows, about 4 years ago at the holidays at Bloomingdale's. So it was like, we had these major, and that was like when we had maybe 4 accounts, Equinox, Bloomingdale's. So we had a lot of synchronicities and coincidences that like lined us up in the beginning. and then we've now, to me, we've always had, I tell people Spiritual Gangster is a movement disguised as a clothing company, and the brand's always been a lot bigger than the business. And for me, it's always been about a mission of how do we, learn all the things we learned in the yoga studios of, positivity and taking care of yourself, and doing charity, and doing well to do good, or doing good to do well. And how do we scale that globally? Because what I realized in the yoga business, there was so much labor to scale, and it was managing all these people, although that still is the case in this business. But it was, how do we take a business and create some products that can have the ethos and the vibe that we learn, and really create this global movement. So right now it's mostly women's clothing, but we do believe, we're adding men's now, we're getting other accessories, but just giving people, we joke that it's like superhero kids for adults, clothes for adults. So you put it on and you feel better. And, people stop you in the street and they say, oh, I'm a spiritual gangster. Oh, that's cool. Or, so the idea is just getting people to feel better about themselves. And then hopefully too, like a trickle down effect, sharing things that are like good for you, good for the environment, great travel, great things that we believe in, and hopefully along the way that continues to stick. One of the things we're most proud of is so far we've donated over 12 million meals to Feeding America. So we've done a lot of, we call it karmic business partners, but we have Feeding America, we have the Cambodian Children's Fund, we have Make-A-Wish, who I've been on the board and a huge supporter of really, using Spiritual Gangster as a force for good. And it's, yes, it's about making money and being profitable, but it's also about making a difference and making an impact and sharing with people what you love.
It's so amazing. And you've done it all so well. And I wish you really knew me, because I want you to know how genuine you're just going to be like, she's just nice. And what is that? But people who listen to my show would get it. It's really amazing. And you said earlier, you're going to be, Ian, you're already so successful by every metric, but you're going to be like, Howard Schultz was here and you said what he said. And that that's his line, or maybe you don't know that about the third place.
I've read Howard's book way back, and I took one of the things from Pour Your Heart Into It, because that's when we created At One Yoga. It was very much about creating that third place.
I should send him an email and introduce you guys, because, Emma can edit. Emma, you can edit this out if you don't want to hear it in there, but he's like super spiritual. And he went to Israel 25 years ago and was like, whatever. And then met this like really holy rabbi, and like every morning learns with this guy.
I got goosebumps all over I got literally, and if you can see my arm, I have goosebumps everywhere. And one of the things that I do is I take trips to Israel, and I bring people to Israel every year now, because I care so much about it. Like Jewish people, non-Jewish people, younger kids. It's like one of my greatest passions.
I love that. And I'm totally a birthright superstar, because I went on it and then stayed for 3 years and lived in Jerusalem for 3 years.
Amazing.
Isn't it true? And you don't have to talk about this. We can edit this out. Amari Stoudemire, he works with you, no?
Amari is one of my original investors and a good friend of mine. And he's now out of Israel.
The freaking coolest guy ever.
When we go to Israel, like, first of all, Amari has the tallest mezuzah of anyone I've ever seen. You have to jump to touch it. But yeah, he's going out in Israel or Jerusalem with Amari is like, he might as well be the president of Israel. Like,
he might as well.
People love him, and he's he's really turned into becoming a great person and a huge Spiritual Gangster fan. But he's done so much for Israel and basketball in Israel, and he's really evolved into an amazing person. So
how did you meet him? How did he meet you?
So he played for the Suns. He used to play for the Phoenix Suns, and it was funny.
He did.
So he was, and one of our friends who does a lot of our graphic art and design was friends with Amari. And, I'm a huge NBA fan and love basketball. So Amari called and wanted to hook up with us. And then he ended up going to yoga with my wife, Vanessa. And after that, he called, he said, I want to be invested in Spiritual Gangster. So literally one yoga class with my wife, and he decided to be part of our team. And he was really early on for us, like, probably 6 years ago.
I'm literally going to cry. I'm so emotional about this, because I'm Jewish and I'm like really connected to it in whatever way. It's fairly out of the box, but very much a part of me. And I had no idea all these years, like, I love this brand. And I figured, oh, this guy's probably it's like a Buddhist guy, whoever started this, and on this show, people are
You can see my star, David, right there.
Yeah. On this show, it's like, people come in, they talk about Jesus, and I'm like, great, whatever's your thing. They talk about it's fine. It's very rare that people come on the show and are proud of being Jewish. And it really makes me feel something.
It's
Because
beautiful. I can feel it and I share it. It's so beautiful, Cathy.
it
It's
is
like
so beautiful.
phenomenal.
And you're amazing. Like I like, little did I know that all of this was being, also because nobody really knows. Like I'll say to people, I'll say things like, God loves you. God is this amazing energy. They're like, are you Christian? I'm like, I'm Jewish. Like, Jews think that? I'm like, no one knows what we think, anything. And you're God. Talk about a movement and a brand. All right, let's go back to you. I don't know how much of that Emma's going to keep in there. Doesn't matter. Listen, let's talk about what you just said, because anyone who's listening to this show needs to understand what you just said. You have been creating so much more than clothing. And that is clear. It's so clear that the clothing is just like one piece of what's really going on. And what's really going on is a movement. What's really going on is it's a lifestyle. It's a mission. How do you do that? And how have you been doing that? Like, what could you teach people who are listening when they want to create whatever business is theirs? What does that mean? How are you putting that out there through your social media, through the way you deal with any human? Like, what does that mean that you're creating, and how does your team know how to intentionally be working on that day to day?
So first off, great question. And, in the beginning, we kind of kept that all to ourselves behind the curtain. So it wasn't something like we said, oh, hey, we're doing all this for Feeding America, or, we just kept that as sort of the secret sauce behind what we were doing. One of the things now we're discussing and really talking about is, okay, how do we kind of amplify the message that we're more than just clothes and we are a movement, and what do we stand for and how do we get that out? In the beginning, we were actually a little shy about that because we didn't want to sort of brag about, oh, look at what good we're doing, or, that just felt a little awkward. So we just wanted to take the steps and do it, and then we do a lot of things to bring, Feeding America has been huge for us. And that's been like, from the beginning, since the first time we sold anything, I have a teacher, his name's Geisha Michael Roach, and he wrote the book, The Diamond Cutter. And, he was the first Buddhist guy to become like a geisha. And one of the things he taught me, it's like important to really plant seeds. And if, you kind of grow what you want, but it's also important to get, whether you call it God or the universe, or get them on your side and make them your partner. So it's more than about just, hey, we want to make money, but we have to make a difference, and you're really providing the fuel for your wins and everything else. So in the beginning, that was super important from when we started, and we've always been doing it. And then finding ways how to impact, and how to share what we love. And, one of the things that when we were figuring out who to really make our karmic business partner do, I think the people, like, we live in such abundance in this country's, no one should have to worry about a meal. So one thing we found, there's, like 20% of kids, like, who are going to school can't even get lunch. So we're like, we can actually solve this problem. This is something that should not be a problem. There's also a charity in Israel, Leket, that, we're working with as well. So it's not just in the US, but we wanted to find something that, one, we could bring attention to, two, we could make a difference to. And then, the other thing that I realized too, is I used to just give and donate and do it anonymously. But I realized now that, one of the greatest things that I have is my network. So we can light up our network to share with people what we believe in, and then, raise way more awareness and money for it. So that's really now what we're being intentional with Spiritual Gangster is, like, what do we want to solve? What's the right way to share it? How do we communicate this? With our staff, we do a thing, where we go to the food banks and they all work it so they can kind of see it. And, the first food bank was actually in Arizona, but we do a lot with the stuff in California. And we do another thing called hashtag lunchbacks, where we bring all these people together and we film it and we put it out there, and we allow people to participate as well as just give money. And we're creating a little bit of, video around it to kind of share about it. But I think, going forward, this is something we're going to turn up the volume on a lot more and amplify it, because we believe in it so much. But, it's interesting. I'll go to Bloomingdale's and people don't even know we do any of this stuff. So I think on some level it works because it's behind the scenes, but also too, now what we realize, in order to really amplify our movement and get the word out there, we're going to be more intentional about how to share it. And even doing things like this with you is another way to tell people, hey, this is who we are and this is why we're doing it. And this was what it's about. But it's a big why for us. The why is, how do we raise the consciousness? We say raise your vibration, spiritual. So how do we raise the consciousness of the people we come in into contact with. And I always talk about win-win. And it's not just about, me winning or our employees winning, but it's about our customers winning. It's about like the FedEx guy or the UPS guy who walks into our place and he feels better in winning, and everyone who works for us. So it's like, how can we create something with such a vibe of positivity that everyone who has an experience with our brand feels stoked, whether they know me or Vanessa or our employees or not. But that's really in its essence what it's about. How do we make people feel better when they come into contact with who we are? And how do we do a better job of sharing with what we're about?
100%. My audience knows this. You're the only person who's spoken this much about giving back. The only one out of almost 300 episodes. And there's been a lot of billionaires who are here. Howard's actually pretty giving, but the way that you approach this is amazing. Also, everything you're saying and what you said earlier, it reminds me that I once heard a friend of mine say, we don't buy things, we buy feelings. And I'm not surprised that Spiritual Gangster, that people see it and they want to buy it because it makes you feel something. It makes you feel something. How often can you say that about a pair of pants or clothes or jacket? Let's talk about those feelings. Let's talk about what you decide to print on those shirts. Love yourself like crazy, mystical, all the things that you talk about. What's the intention there? What are you hoping in terms of the feelings that people are feeling when they're wearing those clothes and what they're representing in the world?
We have a lot of like putting things together, but the idea is to make people feel better about themselves and feel better about what they're standing for. I can't tell you how many people come up to me and say, oh, I was going through this health scare and this was a shirt I wore every day for my chemo, or this was the shirt that I wear believe in miracles, and I get super lucky all the time. So it's just, we want people to feel awesome. Really, we want them to feel awesome. We want to remind them that it's possible. And I'm a big fan and friend of Tony Robbins, and it's all about changing your state. So it's like, how do we put people in that great state that when they put on their, Spiritual Gangster shirt, they're already getting into that channel. So they're maybe more open or more, so it's all about things that raise the vibration of them personally, and then ultimately allow them to raise the vibration of the planet. But, I would say the ethos is Spiritual Gangster, the essence of it is like, we want people to feel good, and we want people to express themselves, and we want them to feel good by also being positive and doing good. Yeah. So hopefully it becomes an inspiration for them to do more and feel great.
And it totally does. It's mission accomplished. When Seth Godin was here, he's like a personal mentor to me, and he was just here a second time. And every time he's here, we talk about what is marketing and what is business. And he always says, it's radical empathy. That's what it is. And boy, do you.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And that's you, right? That's everything we're talking about right now.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I really think that, people vote with their dollars. That's what I tell our whole staff. And people aren't buying products. Like you said earlier, they're buying feelings. And, I remember to this day, I was in Italy when I used to do yoga retreats, and I went shopping in Italy, and I was trying on clothes, and the person in the store wasn't like, how do you look? They said, how do you feel?
Yeah.
And that's really what it's like. I think, you can have anything, and most of that have way too much stuff anyway, but how do you have the things that you have? How do they make you feel? And when you put on your Spiritual Gangster shirt, I think, from a lot of people I talk to, including myself, I'm going to go out and represent that in the world today and make other people feel better. And I'm going to be in a positive state. And, it resonates with people all across the map, right? There's like people from church and older people. And, so to us, we've been very clear about not wanting to limit who can be a spiritual gangster.
Yeah.
Because everyone's a spiritual gangster. And it brings out sort of like, how do you one, feel better about yourself? How do you go out and take positive action in the world to share what you believe in?
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in give what you love. Another thing that I learned from Geisha Michael Roach is figure out what you want and then kind of go help other people get exactly what you want, because then it'll come back to you. So, I think that, Spiritual Gangster for us, like I said, it's a movement disguised as a clothing company. It's really about positivity and spreading great vibes and, uplifting, everyone who we come in contact with, whether they buy our products or not.
Yeah. Let's talk about this for a second, because talking about helping people feel that way and putting on this jacket or putting on this sweatshirt and you're like, all right, I can do this today. I can crush it. And I love the Change Your State. I'm such a Tony fan also. So the thing is, a lot of people listen to this show. It's the saddest thing, Ian. It really like hurts me. But having talked and heard from hundreds of thousands of people over email and whatever, the number one thing that's standing in our way is like our own upper limit. And people walk around feeling that they're not worthy, that why would I post something or help someone or get a teacher training certificate? There's already a thousand other good yoga teachers. There's a real deep sense of self-doubt. And it's probably something that we picked up in childhood, or maybe our parents didn't feel that about themselves. They modeled that. I know that you get it. You're like a lightning rod. There's something about you. You don't even have to talk. I just feel it in your smile and I feel it in your eyes. And it's probably because of your delicious mom and a few of the things that you already shared, but also in your own practice, you learn to come home to yourself and you learn that yourself is like part of this bigger self, right? It's not just you, Ian. It's like you, Ian, are a channel for something bigger. I get that. I can feel that. How do you help people who are listening right now who they maybe haven't put in those hours in the studio to click into that bigger place? And so they get caught up in this, whatever this thing is in their mind that says, I'm only this, I'm not good at this. And that's constantly driving them every day. How do you help them get over that feeling of imposter syndrome?
Well, I think a lot of it is just start small, right? You build momentum and chalk up wins. And I think too, being really intentional. So I think it's super important to how do you want to contribute? And it's almost cliche now, but it's like, if you focus on the other versus focus on yourself, you're going to have so much more wins and momentum and feel better about it. So finding ways that you can contribute on a really simple way, and then that cascades into more. I'm going to share with you a practice that I do, and I've done for 7 years, and it just seems fitting. So one of the things that I've done since I sold our yoga studio, because I still love to teach, but I haven't been teaching much, is I volunteer twice a week at the Jewish old folks home, and I teach Tai Chi every morning. And I've had now people who are, into their hundreds who become my really great friends. And I have one lady who just had, 3 cancer surgeries, and, and I'm doing it just to kind of do it. But the amount that I get from when they share to me of like, what an impact that I've had on their lives and how this has changed and these people are evolving in their 80s, right? They're going through all this and growing and opening up. So I get 10x more out of that than I could have ever gotten to anyone else. But one of the things is go volunteer where no one wants to hang out with old people. So I literally, at first I was like, what can I do to go help them out? I volunteered to be the bartender, and they're like, oh, we can't have drinks here. I'm like, okay, I'll teach Tai Chi. And to this day, I've met so many amazing people who I would have never had contact with, and what they share with me about sort of the influence I've had on them is priceless. So there's so many people who are in need of help, whether it's the person who needs to eat, whether it's the old person who has no family and no one wants to hang out with. So there's so many ways for us to be of service and to get real wins. And then you help your friends and you help their friends' friends. And, I just think that it snowballs. What I realized is that I can have an impact on all these people, and just really taking the time now. And there's a while where I wouldn't take the time and listen and hear and get the feedback and really understand that, life's about making a difference, right? And we're here for a short period, and we come into contact with so many people. But I think that, the people who are, go to an old folks home or go to something where, no one's going to tell you can't do it. Sometimes I have 1 people in the class, sometimes I have 15, right? And, a lot of them have even passed away by now. But it's a really interesting thing. There's all these opportunities to be of service. You just got to figure out who you want to help and get started.
You are so rich. Really. I have this mug somebody made me because I said this on my show one time, which says the opposite of depression is not happiness, it's purpose. And I feel like that's what I learned when I lived in Israel after college for a few years, is that that God doesn't make extras. And like, if I'm here, he needs me, and my job is not to worry about myself. It's like, how can I be of use? And I think we all have this constant, like, well, I'm not as good as this one. It's like, can you just be available? Like, maybe you're not. Like, no, you're not the Messiah. Newsflash. But are you available just to do whatever? Like, was I the best person to start a podcast empirically? No. Was I the best person to do anything? No. It's like, can you just make space? Yes. Can you show up and have empathy? Yes. And where does that lead? And it's unbelievable to me. Like the way that you talk and the way that you live. You guys, listen to me. This man does not, he's not doing, like, he has so much to do. He's busy. He's running a multi-million-dollar company. He's cool. He's already done good things. And he going to a Jewish old age home in the morning. Like that's amazing. That's
Well,
it.
and also too, I can tell you, I've never left that feeling anything but stoked. I feel amazing when I walk out of that.
Stoked.
And
Love it.
it's just such a great way to start the day.
Amazing.
So I think that, I encourage, there's so many different things that you can do to have an impact. And even if you have an impact on one person, it snowballs, and how it makes you feel about yourself. Well, it transforms like what you're able to do for the rest of your day. But you also, I think, self-esteem and self-confidence is one of the greatest assets that someone can have. And you get that by helping others.
It's so true. I mean, it's just so true. Do you feel like being a spiritual gangster, what does that mean? Do you need to have a spiritual practice? Is there one baby bit of like spirituality that anyone can get on board with that's not like going to offend anyone, that you think is something that we could all practice a little bit? What does that mean to you?
So I think there's just a higher power, a higher purpose in our lives, and we're all connected, and I think that we're all very spiritual beings, and I think, I was raised Jewish, but I got way more spiritual from getting into yoga and all this other stuff. And now I've come back and embraced my Judaism, the spirituality in that. But for me, being a spiritual gangster, it's all about, embracing coincidence and serendipity and synchronicities, planting the right seeds. I'm a big believer in, you're growing your own karma, so whatever you want, you share it. And I think just having that mentality that you can make a difference. And something you said earlier, which I think is really important about like even your podcast. So like when I started teaching yoga, I had no business teaching yoga. I barely knew anything about yoga. I remember one of the first guys I wanted to hire out here, he came over and he did a private, and halfway through it, he looks at me, he's like, "Do you even do yoga?"
Oh my God, so rude.
So it was great, but and then he was like, but it turned out to be that.
Do this?
He was like, "Do you even do yoga? How are you opening a yoga studio?" But
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, I was like, amazing. It's really great. If you want to go get a drink, we can finish this interview over a drink. So, but I think that in order to be a great teacher, you don't necessarily need to know everything. You just got to start where you're at. And I think somebody said something yesterday that I heard. It's like, to be a good teacher, you just need to be one step ahead. You don't need to be 30 steps ahead. If you're one step ahead and sharing it, then you're doing a great job of. And I think so many people think they need to be an absolute expert before they get involved. And I'm always been a believer. It's like you teach what you need to learn the most, right? So there's no better way to become a master of that information than by teaching and sharing it, and then you really own it. Yeah. And that's what I discovered in law school. I would get everyone else's outlines, and I would teach them their outlines, and I finished half of my class, but I didn't even know it till I kind of had to teach it.
Yeah.
So I think that part of what we do is, figure out something you have a passion for and then share it with others. And then by doing that, not only are you helping them out because you're a little bit further ahead, but also too, you're helping yourself really become a master and get better at what you're doing.
And then even with the clothing, like you said, we just started it. It wasn't like we had this intention that we were going to be this huge brand. You didn't know that when you started. And I think that's another question that we get from our audience is, you think that people are listening to podcasts because they want to learn how to market, they want to learn how to build the business. But usually what we hear is, Kath, I don't even know what my thing is. Like, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I think there's a lot of people struggling with that. And I've listened to your story, and there's been so many beautiful pivots along the way. So what do you say to someone when they're like, but I don't know, he's so clear. He's so clear on his mission. What's my thing? Like, what was I put in the world to do? I have no clarity on that. So I'm just going to wait until I get an email from God with like my, what I'm supposed to do with my life. What do you say to that?
So my dad told me, one of his greatest advice to me was always like, you'll figure it out. And I think you have to realize you'll figure it out. And I think that, you just kind of start moving down the path and things appear to you as you go. There's actually a great story, and it talks about like in Jewish mythology, there's like 7 gates to get the kingdom of heaven. And the way it works is until you shut that other gate and walk away, the next gate doesn't appear.
Ooh.
So there's part of it is like, even from quitting my law job to become a yoga teacher, selling my yoga business to now get an apparel, all of which I knew nothing about the next step, right? But you have to actually close the other door and go, and then all of a sudden the path appears once you start walking. And I think that's what happens in life. I mean, everything, I'm a big believer, everything in life is coming from me. So, you get what you put out there, and that's the whole idea of karma, but things will show up and I don't want to call it magically appear for you, but things appear for you to help you on your way right when they're needed, whether it's Amari Stoudemire or the guy, the CEO of Lifetime to buy my last business. It's things just, now I rely on those things happening and showing up.
That's amazing. I've never heard that story. I don't know how I missed it, but that's an amazing, it's like the Tony Robbins, like you got to burn the boats, you take the island, you burn the boats. Boom. You got it. What for people? Go ahead.
And I think there's a big, huge thing that happens energetically when you commit to something and go for it, that then all the powers of the universe come up to assist you. But until you go for it, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. And it seems to me like every movie I've ever seen, whether it's Rocky or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, every movie is that story. It's like, that's the hero's journey of, I got knocked out and something inside of me is like ready to just completely give up. And for some reason, I'm still marching forward. And then the courage I have to march forward, I get rewarded for that. It's just how it seems, right? It's like every story. It's like every great story.
And I think whether it's Joseph Campbell or any great movie you see is like, it's the hero's journey, and that's part of it, right? And all of us too, sometimes when you feel the most down is when you're also ready for the greatest breakthrough.
Yeah.
Like when you kind of meet the resistance. But I think, I'm a big believer, you have to follow your bliss. And I just think you got to do what you love and share with others. And, the wealth and the abundance and the richness that comes back to you is 10x than you could ever expect it to be. But it's just sort of like a byproduct. That's not the real, that's not the real juice of what it's all about.
Yeah. Everyone's always asking me, like, what do you do to build a community overnight? How do you get more followers? How do you like, as if there's like a hack that I'm like keeping from someone, as if I knew it, I would share it, And your community, if you look, this is the thing about your community. If you look at a Spiritual Gangster post, or if you look at an article or anything Spiritual Gangster, the engagement is huge. It's like, look how many people are engaging with it. Like as if it's like theirs. It's like, this is me. This isn't just something right? What does that mean to you? How does that work? When you're, because in the beginning, I'm sure you were doing all these things yourself, whether it was like social or whatever. Now, of course, you probably have thousands of people helping you. But when people are asking you, how do I do social media? How do I market? How do I do it in a way that's effective and engaging? You've done it so beautifully. What would be your answer for that?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I just had a call all morning with my digital media team, and then I got a call after this. So it's obviously something that's very important for us and top of mind. I think, one, you got to keep it relevant, and you've got to do all the stuff, like there's all the tactics and strategy that are super important too. But I think it's having a real compelling message. And a friend of mine, I'll share a story from the early days. So he used to have a TV show, and he would wear Spiritual Gangster, and he would wear other brands on their show. One of them was like Matthew McConaughey's brand. And he said, Ian, when I'm wearing these other brands, I feel like I'm repping their brand. He goes, when I wear Spiritual Gangster, I feel like I am the brand. So the idea is really letting people know they are the brand. And it's a way for them to, sort of share the beliefs of who they are and what they're about with the world. And also have, like when you say about their posts and their input is that's why we've been very intentional and not narrowing what it means to be a spiritual gangster and letting everyone define it, because it's so open. Everyone's a spiritual gangster. That's what I believe. And everyone has a different view of what it means to be a spiritual gangster. Some people it's singing in their church choir. Some people it's, hiking Machu Picchu. Other people it's going to Israel. So that's really, to me, what it's very inclusive.
I love that. When I'm wearing your clothes, I don't feel like I'm repping your brand. I feel like this is me. That's it. That's so, so good. Oh my God. Are you still practicing yoga in the same way that you were?
My wife goes every day. I do yoga probably once a week. I do a lot of like Tai Chi, and I do a lot of other practices. So my yoga's evolved into other things, but I'm a daily meditator. I do energy practices. I study a lot. There's a guy, Sadhguru, who's become a good friend of mine and my golfing buddy, who's like the Ishta yoga guy. So I do his practices. But I do a lot of like Chinese martial arts practices mixed with yoga, but I have a daily practice. And I think that's a real big part of who I am. And, I do that ahead of everything, even because I think it's really allowed me to build my own energy and get more in tune. And also that's why synchronicities, serendipities, coincidences happen all the time, because we're all beams. When we're all we live in an energetic universe, right? So we're all attracting different things. And I think the more that you can build and maintain and clean your own energy, the more miraculous your life becomes. And to me, yoga is great. I love yoga, but it's not like the magic pill, just like there's no magic pill for social media. But it is a great thing that once you incorporate in your life, it helps you get open. And then once you get open, you can start exploring more and more and more. But I am a huge believer in having some sort of daily practice that connects you to a higher power or your source of energy or God or whatever you want to call it. And I think that's part of being a spiritual gangster, is really maintaining that connection to something greater.
I love that. All of it. I could just take a highlighter and just highlight it all, because it's so true. We live in it's all energy. It's all energy. And I one of the things I learned at the Mindful Awareness Research Center when I studied there a couple of years, and so it was exhausting and amazing to learn to meditate and whatever. But one of the things that I learned is that what lights up in the brain more than love is enthusiasm. It's like you, Ian, you're magnetic because you're so enthusiastic. Every single thing you said today, boom, you're like this and this and this. And that energy, that's why when you walked into those first meetings at Equinox or Bloomingdale's, they were like, whatever this is, here's a check. Let me have, it's energy. Because let's be clear, there's a lot of other people who've tried to make spiritual type clothing. I don't know the names of those brands. I can't even name one, but I've seen shirts with like Grateful or whatever. Who cares? It's like there's something going on. That's the engine. It's your enthusiasm. It's your magnetism. That's what's going on.
Well, and I think, one of the things that I am enthusiastic, and it's intentional because I care and I'm excited. And, I have a good friend of mine who I grew up with, has a couple kids under two, and just got diagnosed with cancer, right? So it's like, who knows how many more days you get to live. So you might as well spend your time, one, making a difference and being enthusiastic about it. Like my rituals in the morning, I get up this morning before our call, I did an hour in the infrared sauna, I went in the ice plunge outside, I did my practices, but all that makes me who I am. And, it helps increase my energy levels and my enthusiasm and gets all my sensors open. And that doesn't happen by accident. It's not like any day I look out there, I'm like, God, today's a great day. I just want to jump in this ice pool, right? But also too, I'm like, I'm getting in, even if I get in for 30 seconds, right? I'm just going to do that because it's basically building that energy up. And then that's how I feel afterwards as well. It's just like going to the old folks home. It's every time I leave there, I feel awesome afterwards. And sometimes I'm like, oh shit, I dropped my kids at school. I got all this work to do. I've got other stuff I would rather do maybe, but I'm never sorry after I do it. And it's the same thing with all these practices. So I think that, finding ways to get yourself energetic, enthusiastic, to increase your health and vitality, that'll pay off 10x in your business, in your relationship with your kids. But if you're in a low energy state, everything's impossible. Tony Robbins is great at that. But if you show up with energy and enthusiasm, everything's possible. So I think that's one of my greatest takeaways. Business is just something we choose to do with our time, right? And you have a whole life. You can do whatever you want. So one, do something where you can make a difference and that you have a passion about it and care about it. But also do something where you can, I think, bring your enthusiasm to it and share with other people. Because I think the more people you can turn on and get them stoked, it's like it snowballs.
You're amazing. It's the worst job in the world, but I feel like if this is the way that if you did this and people heard it, you could run for president. It's the worst job. Never do it. But you're so lovable. And as you're talking, are you friends with Brian Grazer? Are you guys buddies?
I would love to be friends with Brian Granger. I saw him speak one time at
I'm
Summit.
going to
I was
introduce you
blown
guys.
away. I love it. I love it. Like he
he
is
and
just
you-
so enthusiastic and, curious and always like learning. I saw him do a talk and I was just hanging on it. And I just,
Okay, Emma, you
like
gotta,
such an amazing.
I'm going to introduce them because he would love you so much and he would rock that. I'm sure he already has those clothes. I'm sure he has it.
If not, he's going to get some. But
He's going to get some. He's going to get some.
I've got what an amazing morning. First of all, getting to spend the hour with you. And then now like getting hooked up with Howard Schultz, who's one of my I've read his books, one of my favorite iconic people. It's amazing.
It's the littlest, tiniest thing. That's one of my favorite things to do. But you know what it is? It's energy. It's like you just reminded me of Brian. So I thought of that. And then you reminded me of Howard because he said a third place. And he's super into, being Jewish and going to Israel. Okay, listen, I'm going to let you go. Tell us where we can find you, where we can buy some clothes, where we can get on board with helping support the mission. Tell us all the things.
So spiritualgangster.com. You can come and check out our website. You can check out all of our great product, our apparel. You can hear a little bit about what we're doing with Feeding America and some other charities that we support. I'm happy to take any email. My email is ian@spiritualgangster.com.
Is that a joke? I cannot.
No, I'm serious. And I would also tell you, a great thing too, if you haven't, check out Feeding America and what they're doing, because they really do an amazing thing for this planet.
What can we say about you? Mensch.
Amazing.
Mensch.
I'll take
stamped. The cutest. I hope that we stay in touch because you're amazing. And thank you for all of this. I just feel like I got an infusion this morning, an infusion of light. You are awesome. I did not know what to expect. Blown away. So delighted. Thank you. You have so much to do. I'm going to let you go.
Very mutual. Thank you so much for having me on. What an amazing thing you created too, Cathy. It's so phenomenal.
Are you in LA, by the way?
I'm in LA a lot. Our offices are in downtown, so I'd love to take you for lunch or coffee.
To get out. That'd be like Disneyland on steroids. Okay, you go. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye, honey.
Bye.